Hello, my friends, and welcome to my very low budget film. Actually, my first attempt at making a video introducing a concept that I work with and introduce to all of my clients in my life coaching business. And I thought it might be useful to create a video on this particular topic because just based on resounding feedback from all of my clients, based on my own personal experience, this tool is that I'm about to teach you is probably going to be one of the tools that has the biggest impact on your life. Really, 10 years down the road, when you look back at your experience in this coaching program, you will remember this tool. It's also an incredible tool to teach your kids too, because it's something that is just so easy to digest and is so helpful in being able to work through your own thought processes and get to the root of where feelings are coming from. So I call this tool the thought model, and you could see it right here, but just a second, I'll get there. I didn't invent this thought model. It's a kind of a compilation of different brilliant mindfulness techniques and mindfulness experts. I have to admit that I am a self-help junkie. When it comes to reading, that's usually the kind of book that I'm reading because it's interesting to me. It's just that basic human psychology. And so really this thought model came from a lot of really well-known and respected leaders in our field, folks like Eckhart Tolle, who wrote The Power of Now, Byron Katie, who wrote Loving What Is, the authors of Motivational Interviewing. Really, I read this textbook in college, and this was my first introduction to being able to piece through your thoughts as they relate to feelings. And then, of course, Viktor Frankl and The Will to Meaning. I mean, these were all experts that really introduced the idea of the thought model. And then it was a coach named Brooke Castillo who came through and put the model into this very just tangible, to put it in a model, basically. So I want to introduce it to you, and it's my hope that this week you will take this model, think it through, and practice it. And I'm going to give you a handout as well that'll be attached to this email that you'll be able to practice the model on paper. So when is this model useful? This model is useful whenever you have a situation where you are uncomfortable, a situation where you're feeling stress or anxiety or something that's agitating. If there is just something happening that you're just not sure what the root of it is, the model is useful. So here's how we can think about it. The situation is a circumstance, and the circumstance is the thing that you cannot change. So let's come up with a fictitious example. Let's say that it's your birthday and your husband forgot your birthday, and you're devastated about it. He just completely forgot. So the circumstance, this is what you can't change. This is just the fact. The fact is your birthday, he forgot, right? That's the circumstance. There's nothing you can control with that. It's just what happened. So that's the circumstance. Now, the thought that you're going to have around that circumstance is going to be, that fucking asshole, he forgot my birthday. He's really inattentive. Now, the feeling that is going to result, that is going to happen because of that thought, is probably going to be sadness, a little bit of resentment and irritation. Now, the action. So your action, what you're actually going to do in this fictitious example, is probably going to be to pull away from him and to not be warm with him. Now, the result of your action of pulling away and being maybe cold with him is that he's going to be cold with you, right? And that is going to reinforce your thought that he is an asshole. You see how these things are so integrally connected. This isn't like, rocket science, but this model is such a linear way to be able to see how our thoughts create our feelings, influence our actions, and produce results. So let's back up a little bit. So we've already defined the circumstance. The circumstance is a situation that's just happened that we can't control, right? The thought is a sentence in our brain. That's just it. It's just a thought, a sentence in our brain. The feeling is the experience in our body. So oftentimes when we talk about anxiety, for example, where do you feel that anxiety? Physically, where is it? The statement, I have anxiety, is actually a thought. It's not a feeling. The feeling of anxiety would be, I feel a tenseness in my stomach, my heart's beating fast, and my shoulders are just achy. I have a feeling of sadness, for example. The action, so thought is a sentence in your brain, right? The feeling is the experience or the sensation in your body, and action is what you do, and the result is the product. Does that make sense? So here is where this model becomes so useful, because whenever we're stressed or anxious, where in this process do we show up? We show up here. We show up with our feeling. Again, back to the example of the husband forgetting the birthday. If he forgets my birthday, I may not even be aware of what thought is going on in my head. All I feel is devastated and sad and ignored and angry. And I don't even know why I feel that way. Maybe I think, there's no I may not slow down enough to think about the thought that's fueling that feeling. That fact right there can be so empowering. And again, in the beginning, when I said this is a concept that you can teach your kids, I really see that we, particularly as women, have this idea that feelings, that our emotions kind of reign over us and take over our bodies and we can't control them. And that's absolutely not true. That's such a disempowering statement, and it's a disempowering thing to allow our children to believe, that our thoughts influence our feelings and we can always change our thoughts. Is so empowering. It puts you in the driver's seat and essentially means that you are in control and in charge of your life. If you are in charge of your thoughts, then you're also in charge of the result that you get. So can you see why it's so difficult for us to acknowledge this sometimes? Because what if we don't like our result? If we don't like our result, we want to blame it on someone else. We want to hold someone else accountable. We don't want to back up and think, what was the thought that I had that influenced this result? Because I am fully, totally, and 100% accountable for my own thoughts. So again, in this model, oftentimes we show up with the feeling and then we just end it there. We don't step back to think, what is the thought? Can I change the thought? Or we don't even step back to see, how is this feeling going to influence the action or the result? So here's a great way to use this diagram, and I use it this way all the time, and I mean it. I write this diagram down onto a piece of blank paper, and I just start journaling. What is the thought in my head? What is the feeling? What is the action? What is the result? I just had a situation the other day with a coworker of mine that was just absolutely driving me crazy. And I was so conflicted in my brain with the feelings and the emotion that I couldn't even piece apart what I was supposed to be angry at. I know you guys have felt this way. It's a really kind of helpless feeling. And when you get highly emotional like that, chances are you're going to do something that you regret, right? Which is not what I wanted to do. So I sat down, I did this diagram, I just wrote out circumstance, thought, feeling, action, result. And I started with the result, meaning what result in the situation with my coworker did I want? What did I want? Well, the result that I wanted was to have a working team. I wanted a working team. So in order to get a working team, what thought did I have to produce this thought? The thought had to be that, well, without giving you all the gory details, but the thought had to be that actually he's kind of a nice guy and is well intentioned. And the feeling behind that was one of just more empathy and compassion. The action meant that I started responding to his emails in a more timely manner. The result was that we're starting to work more as a team. So you can see where in a situation where you are feeling uncomfortable or confused or unsure of what is right or left, you can just sit down with a diagram and you can just enter in at any point the data that you know. Maybe you just know what the action was, but you're having a hard time feeling through the thought or the feeling. Enter in the action. Enter in the action that you are currently taking and the action that you want. So, it's a useful model. It can help you decide, it can help you piece apart A, where you are at currently with your thought process, and B, where you want to be with your thought process. And it's incredibly useful in resolving anxiety because it reminds you that you are in control, that you are in the driver's seat, because every result in your life is a direct result every result in your life is directly influenced by your thoughts that you have. So that's the thought model. I want you to practice it this week. Again, look for any situation that gives you some kind of an emotional disruption and practice the thought model. The other really beneficial thing to do is to teach this model to someone. If you're teaching it to your kids, it can be a great opportunity for that teaching. Through that teaching process, you're reinforcing it into your brain. A really cool thing is that the more you do this, the more natural it becomes, and then you actually don't even have to sit down and write it on paper. The biggest difference I've felt in my life and what I see in my clients' lives is that often when we start this, we have a hard time identifying what is a thought and what is a feeling. And if we can't distinguish between the two, we have a really hard time figuring out how to change that thought. So that's probably going to be something that you will experience or recognize in yourself, that you're having a hard time distinguishing between the thought and the feeling. Oh, one more thing before I go, is that if you are at a place where you've diagrammed out the current situation, so the current thought, the feeling, the action, the result, just like in our first example with the husband who forgot the birthday, and you know you need to change the thought because the thought that you're currently having about your husband, for example, is not giving you the result that you want. So you know you need to change that thought, but you have no idea. You don't even want to change it. Like you just have that resistance to it, the resistance to changing it. That's where a lot of people will say, like, do some positive affirmations, stand in front of the mirror every day and say, I'm so beautiful, and then you'll feel beautiful. I'm not a fan of positive affirmations. I think that's really silly, and that's not really going to change the root of your thought. But logic will change the root of your thought. So do your thought diagram, figure out where you're at with the thought, feeling, action, result. If you're not liking where your thought is at and you know you need a new thought, but you're not sure what that thought is, look at your old thought, look at the thought that you're currently having, and ask yourself a very simple question. Ask yourself, is this true? So in our original example, the thought I would have is that my husband is, unsympathetic and let's say he's selfish. My thought is that he's selfish. He forgot my birthday. So sitting back and saying, is this true? Is my husband selfish? Meaning, is this true? Like in the court of law, could this be proven true that my husband is selfish? No, it actually couldn't. I mean, in that situation, maybe, but he's not selfish. It's not true. When we are able to adjust our thinking in a way that shows the logic versus this implied reasoning that we so desperately want to hold on to, it helps us switch. It's like helping us switch from the right brain back to the left brain and really being able to see the facts. So by asking yourself the simple question, is this true? You will be able to see how your current thought is not based on reality, and you will have a far more greater motivation to change it, to change your thoughts so that it does, in fact, align with reality. So there's my short, low budget film on the thought model. Again, you'll be receiving a handout so that you can print it off and do your first couple thought downloads and models. And if you have any questions, I'll talk to you later. Bye, lovelies. Mwah.